people I get to hang out with who are all next level guys. That's everything that, there's no negativity. You get to.
I mean, you built a heck of a business model, just there in Frisco. I'm sure you have other businesses too. We can talk more about that, but
that's going to be really hard because I've shaped my life around that question. Because I have almost died a couple times.
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode in the Dynamic Lifestyle Podcast. We have the awesome Matt Chalmers with us in the house. How you doing, Matt?
I'm well. How are you guys?
Doing well. And I got to ask, are you podcasting from the actual wellness center?
Yes, yeah, I am. I come in the office and that's where I do most of my stuff, so I can keep away from the dogs and the kids.
Right on. No, it's I just had a feeling, but it's we've been going there for the last year and a half, and it's an amazing place that you've built and just good community and good vibes and stuff too. So I'm excited to talk a little bit more about all that stuff.
Awesome, yeah, man. Well, yeah, open book. Go ahead, whatever you guys need.
Well, we kind of have a tradition here on this podcast show. We start off with what's called rapid dynamic questions. So just to get to know a little bit more about you. So you ready for that?
I am. Let's do it.
All right. So we live in this great city of Frisco, Texas. If Frisco was able to grant you a billboard, what would that billboard say?
Oh, gosh. I don't know. Billboards are kind of over and done. I guess we just, right? I would want it to say, go to the website, because I can give so much more information on digital than I can on print. I don't know. Probably that would probably be the big thing. It's just, I guess if I had to pick a quote, it would be good chemicals. Health is good chemicals in versus bad chemicals out. Okay. So that'd probably be the quote I'd want to throw up there.
All right. Yeah, that's a good one. And then is there something else too, Matt, maybe this year, we're about four months into this year. Is there anything that maybe surprised you that you didn't really expect, this year? Maybe something you learned or just something kind of was just out of the blue or anything like that?
Not kind of. And it doesn't on the surface understand why it goes to what I do, but Elon buying Twitter is a big deal. Yeah. There's a lot of medical information that we've been trying to get out to people and has not been able to get out. And so I'm hoping that when this deal finally closes, we'll get a little bit more ability to communicate with other doctors around the world and figure out how things are affecting people here versus there. And so just that increase in communication, I think, is the thing I was not expecting. I thought it was going to get tighter and harder to communicate, and apparently it might get easier. That's really the big thing in my sphere that we're dealing with. That I think is going to be a big change.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. What are 1 to 2 just really important skill sets that every entrepreneur should really invest in?
Learn how to use social media. So we're doing a big deal. One of the companies we run is working with youth athletes and teaching them what to say. The idea that what you say today will be there in 30 years type of a thing. So be careful about what you say, how to advertise, how to build your brand online, because the billboard question set this up really well. If you were I will give you a billboard for $5 a month, I wouldn't take it, because no one cares about billboards. Gary Vee was doing a deal where he's I guess billboards are still a thing. When I'm in the car, I'm on my phone. Yeah. So that would be the thing. If you're not fully into social, that's a big problem. That'd probably be the number one thing I tell people. And then the other thing is, if you own a business, you got to learn the whole best thing about 1099 is the tax structure. So if you're not fully in on saving money with taxes for businesses, that'd be the first place I'd start.
I love it. 100%. We could talk later about why we moved from California here to Texas. And that was one of the big reasons on there too. But the last question I have, Matt, just to wrap up these rapid dynamic questions, just what keeps you up at night these days? What's maybe the biggest worry?
Supply chain. So I'm partnered with some groups that are making supplements, and we're building and manufacturing a lot of things. And creatine used to be $4 a kilogram. Now it's closer to $40 a kilogram. Yeah. We just can't get stuff. So I'm calling my vendors and how much of this product do you have left? And they're we have 1,000. I'm I'll take all of it. And they're well, you only use 80 a month. I'm I get that. I'm can you get more? They're like, we're pretty sure we can. I'm like, I'll take the full 1,000.
Yeah.
So, that the supply chain, I think, is going to become a bigger and bigger issue. They're talking about food being a problem now.
Yeah.
Anything with gas or anything with transportation is going to be a problem. So, I'm trying to get as much stuff in now as we can from a supply chain function. That's my big worry now is, will the stuff I need be here next week?
Yeah. Interesting times for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But okay. So we're done with the rapid questions. So you're off the hot seat.
Yeah.
Let's jump into some good stuff now, Matt. So, I mean, you built a heck of a business model, just there in Frisco. I'm sure you have other businesses too. We can talk more about that. But I mean, you're a chiropractor and you're a health and wellness expert. What is it that you enjoy so much about just helping people?
So this came up because I'm now partnered with RD Life. People are like, wow, how much are you getting paid for that? I'm like, nothing. Like, you're not taking any cash? I'm like, no, nothing. And the thing is that people ask me, like, why do you do stuff like that? The thing that drives what I do is I feel like at one time, that you call it God or the universe, whatever I die, someone's going to come to me and ask me, did you take more from the universe or did you give more back?
Mm.
And so that's one of those things. The thing that drives me is because I've been blessed so much with everything that's been able to work around the practice and all the business deals I've done, all that type of stuff. So my goal is, am I giving enough back? So that was the thing with the Elon deal, because I would love to come out and express what I'm doing to help people with COVID, or what I'm doing to help people with, all the different neurologic issues that we're being able to fix with some of the cannabis technology we have. So that's the thing, is how do we best get the message across? How do we craft a message that gets the most information to the most amount of people, that's most understandable? So that's the thing that's been keeping me up awake. My buddies like Josh Payne, who's now the CEO of ID Life, have been able to really help. They're like, look, if you're worried about balance, we can help take this and help millions of people through the spheres they have. And so I'm doing a lot more partnerships now to try to figure out how we can help the most people. That's probably the thing that keeps me up the most.
Yeah. And then also, that's really interesting. So where did you kind of adopt that mindset of just like, when I leave this world, did I give enough or did I take more?
So the parable of the talents, lots of people look at that as a money thing. There's a lot of things that I look at a little bit differently than everybody else does in the world. But that's one of those things, because, one guy gets it, buries it, doesn't do anything with it. And it's kind of like a whatever. One guy squanders it, doesn't do very well. And but the guy who actually takes the talent, the thing that he was given, and applies it properly and grows it, was given substantially more on top of that. And so my thing was that's a double-edged sword, right? Because if you look at success, if you grade success by dollars and you get a ton of money in, how are you offsetting that? How are you proving that you've given back to the universe? You've got all these dollars that you now get to play with, right? What have you done to give back? Now, I understand I gave a service, people exchange the marketing function that I get. But the thing that I was worried about was, if the dollars don't matter and what I did to society matters, I was taken care of very well. What did I do to help take care of other people? And so that's where, and I've been working on this for a long time as a personal thing. And so that's where that really comes from is, if I'm given a lot, I've got to do whatever I can to make sure that I've given back to the community.
Yeah. So it's more of just like an impact thing as well.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Gotcha. And then early on, you said you've done some work on this and stuff too. And Chris and I are no strangers to this. We've invested a lot of money into personal development, just mentors, coaches. So we understand, like, when you say you have a different outlook, I mean, we have a different lens as well too. So how would you say you were, like, let's say even 10 years ago, like, how was your frame of mind?
Well, it's so funny because I always tell people, like, if you took me back in time to when I first started the practice, I would not want to hang out with that guy. And that's the thing. Like, I tell people, like, if you could go back and hang out with you 10 years ago and you'd be cool with that, you haven't grown enough.
True.
Right. And so that's a personal belief I have. I'm not trying to insult anybody, but like, that's just where I'm at, and my wife has done an amazing job of helping me get to where I am now. And all my friends, I'm buddies with Ryan Stewman, and he's done an amazing job just leading by example. Like, I'll talk to him every once in a while, but then just the people I get to hang out with who are all next level guys, that's everything that, there's no negativity. You get to a certain level of guys who are they're doing 80, 90 million a year. They're super positive. And you find out there's all sorts of negative stuff going on around them. And they're like, I don't care about that. How am I going to fix it? So what I have noticed in my personal life, the higher the success, the higher the positivity of the people who are around it. And so that's been a big piece of, just trying to figure out how do we move forward in the best possible way.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, love that. Yeah. And you also, you mentioned that your wife is like a key attribute to kind of helping you like through that growth. Like what else are some kind of like things, maybe like just tangible, like, steps or, we can just call it prescriptions that you did to kind of like, grow?
I've spent a lot of time reflecting on what I've said, what I've done, and how things work. And so my big thing is I always try to figure out the why. Why does this thing work the way it works? And it's helped so much in my psychological and my relationship function, but it is the reason why I can do all of the things I do from a health standpoint. So, plantar fasciitis, carpal tunnel, celiac, COVID, like all the things we've been able to work with. It's why is this thing happening, and what systems affected by that, and how do we change that? So digging into the why has been really, really big. But the big thing is that you got to turn that back around on you. Be like, when I did this thing, was I taking into account everybody in the situation? So like when something happened in the office and I went to deal with it, was I factoring in how Dr. Bethany dealt with it? Was I factoring in how Rachel, our office manager, was dealing with it? Like, did I factor in everything around it? And if I didn't, that means that I'm not as good of a manager. I'm not as good of a leader as I should be because I didn't take everybody into account. So there's been lots and lots of time over the past 15 years that I've spent wondering, did I do that right? If there was there a better way? And so then you get into reading all sorts of things. Probably, Dr. Peterson's stuff is fantastic.
Yeah.
The Love Languages book is probably, in my opinion, the best lay book you can read on interpersonal communication. So those type of things, I've spent a lot of time working on that.
Yeah, I love that too. And that's one thing too, like, I struggle with is just kind of self-reflection. I think just a lot of people too, if they were just to kind of just like, take that time to just reflect on certain things, man, like they would just really get some breakthroughs and ahas, to really make themselves evolve.
Yeah. One of the things I tell my kids is that, before you start figuring out how everybody else screwed up, you got to figure out where you screwed up first, because if you can fix that problem, it'll probably fix some of the problems of your team.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, whenever something bad happens, look to yourself and say, what role did I play in the way this thing worked out? And then fix that first. And oftentimes I found out that I'm in charge. So I don't care what my employees said or did. If I didn't tell them, if I didn't set the stage on how this issue is supposed to be handled, well, then it's a lapse of judgment, in my opinion, of not being able to foresee that and deal with it. So I try to take as much on me as I can, but at the same time, it's like, no, I told them to do it this way. They just chose not to do it the way I told them to. Yeah. And so that's actually on them. But that piece of self-reflection has helped me a ton, because then when something else comes up, my brain goes, hey, when you explain this, make sure you do X, Y, and Z. But because I've taken it on me and I need to fix that problem with me, I can then, as I start changing the way I do things, it affects everybody around me. And that's why I try to take it. What was my role first?
100%. Yeah. And so what I want to do is I want to shift gears into kind of like the entrepreneur side of things, right? So you started Chalmers Wellness, right? And then it's like, what drove you to actually start your own practice and then, become an author, a speaker, and then your own podcast? What drove kind of like that entrepreneurial side of things?
So my family's always owned their own businesses. And I understand the difference between W-2 and 1099. And so that was kind of there's no way I'm going to do W-2 if I can do 1099, if I can own my own business. I will say that was a mistake. I should not have started my own business right out of college, right out of high school. Not high school, but right out of chiropractic school. I should have gone with somebody who knew what they were doing, who had a successful business and kind of learned that industry specific functionality before I went and tried to do it myself. Because trial and error is awesome. And we all have to recognize how great trial and error is. But if you can sit down with somebody and be like, hey, I could spend 5 years screwing up, or I could spend a year you telling me how you screwed up, and I don't have to do those same screw ups. 100% I should have either apprenticed, worked for somebody. I should have done something like that. But I always knew that I was going to work 50 times harder if it was my thing. And if I was calling the shots, I was going to learn faster. I was going to grow bigger at the end of the day. And I don't know, man, the idea of working for somebody else just doesn't sit right with me. So all that thing came together. I was just like, I got to do my own thing. And so it's been ever since then, just because the way I think. I mean, I probably, God, right now I either own controlling on the tax form, you own more than 25%. We're probably looking at 20 or 30 businesses right now. And because I work with an investment team, not a team, I'm partnered in an investment company. We look at deals every single day. Yeah. And so, that's just entrepreneurial spirit of there's a better way to do this and I can do that thing. That's just been part of me forever.
Yeah. And I love how you kind of touched on trial and error, because that's the thing. People don't understand how costly that is, with trial and error, man. It's like, we work with health and fitness coaches too. And we tell them like, look, there is a such thing as a long cut and a shortcut, right?
Yeah.
And the long cut is basically what you said, kind of trial and error. I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to wear all the hats, right? Or you can do the shortcut where it's like, you can do an apprenticeship, you can hire a mentor, you can buy into a system that has done it, and you don't have to sit there and do so much time. You can accelerate that learning curve.
Yeah. And that's probably the biggest thing that I've learned is exactly that but here's the big thing, back to self-reflection. If something screws up, you've got to look at it and be like, why did this not work? Was it me? Was I the variable in this that screwed it up? Would this have worked had somebody else done it? And if it would, give it to someone else. Let somebody else do it.
Yeah.
Like the delegation thing is so big. Like, I always tell people, like when I do consulting for people, like a great example. I was talking to a doc he's a surgeon, and I was like, let's have a meeting Saturday. And he was like, I'm going to mow my yard Saturday. And I was like, oh, are you a yard guy? And he goes, no, I hate it. And I was like, oh my God, why do you mow your own lawn? And I was like, you've got to hand that off to somebody else. I'm like, you're a $500 an hour guy. You can get it mowed for $40. Like, this is a bad allocation of resources.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, I guess you're right. If you love to mow, like that's your piece, right? Like that's your thing, right? I'm outside, I'm getting some exercise. If that's your thing, cool, go mow your yard. It's worth the exchange. But that's the big piece of, when you're going through, you're doing trial and error. A lot of people don't take a look back and be like, where's my time being spent?
Yeah.
Right? Because like, if you're doing a $20 an hour job and you're a $100 an hour guy, you need to hand that job off to somebody else. Yeah. You just got to find the person who can do it.
Yeah.
So that's the big piece.
Yeah, no, 100% on that. And then just even kind of just going back to about the whole thing of like, the problem is with social media too, Matt. It's just social media paints this picture of just like entrepreneur is this like glorious thing. It's so easy to do, like instant gratification. It's so funny, and just most people just don't understand. Like, it's like, take that route. Like you said, just be an entrepreneur instead of an entrepreneur. And something my pastor said that stuck with me is he says, when you want to be successful, you have to grow there before you go there. And most people aren't willing to do that.
And that's the other thing. Like, it's funny because we have one of the companies we have is everything's set up. Everything's ready to go. We have all the licenses. Everything's good to go. And this is going to be from idea to product on the street in like a year. And I told somebody, I was like, it's super fast. We gotta be super careful because we're gonna have product on the street a year from now. And they're like, that seems like a long time. And I was like, you obviously don't know from like creation, filing with the state to create the company to like a functional product on the street that you have distribution for the whole country. A year is not that long of a time.
Yeah.
So that's the other piece is, like you said, the entrepreneur thing is definitely not overnight. Yep. It is definitely a lot harder than people think. What happens is that you get guys who have done this 20 times and they've got a big team and they're like for instance, we're looking at a company and I'm like, this is gonna be super cheap to start. Like, it's $500,000 and we're there. And we know 20 or 30, like, it wasn't how we're gonna get the $500,000. It's who are we going to call that we want to deal with, because we've got so many guys who are willing to toss that type of cash at us to start this type of thing. So, when you're talking about that, when you've done it a lot, it gets a lot easier because you're like, that idea won't work for these reasons. That team is not the right team for this, for these reasons. We need capital for this. I know the people to get a hold of to get that capital. Oh, hey, we need licensing. I know the people to call to expedite the licensing. So entrepreneurship, it does seem like really easy. We're like, well, this guy started 20 companies. Mm-hmm. His first one sucked.
Yeah.
Like, no one knew him. No one liked him. He had no friends. He had no contacts when he started that first one. And so the 10th, 12th, 15th one was super easy. Like, even when you start your first one, you like log on to the SEC or you log on to the Secretary of State and you're like, what am I picking? Is it C Corp? Is it LLC? Like, if you're doing this by yourself, you don't even know that. Like, so it takes you 2 hours to log in and figure that all out. By your 10th company, you're like, hey, log on to this, do X, Y, and Z. It'll be $300 and just knock it out. I need that done by the end of the day. And it's just no big deal. So all the stuff that was so time consuming and hard, you've already done by your 4th and 5th. But at social media, they like to talk about the guys who've done 10 or 12 companies and how easy it was for them to do their next one. And you're like, yeah, the next one is always easy. The first one's incredibly difficult. So that's probably the big thing I would tell entrepreneurs is that don't look, like you said, don't look at these social media guys who have started 50 companies and think, well, they've done 50. It's got to be easy. It's the first one sucks.
Yeah. So you have no idea what they've been through.
Right.
So I want to read a slogan that you guys have at Chalmers Wellness, and you guys say superior wellness through focus and persistence. So why do you feel people lack focus and persistence these days within their health and wellness?
Here's the double-edged sword of social media. I think that everybody has a voice now, and some of those voices are stupid.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm sorry. When I say stupid, I mean ignorant and uninformed, right? So they take a piece of information and they say, this is great. CBD is a fantastic example of this, because people will say CBD makes your hair fall out, grows your hair, takes your pain away, gives you, makes you relax, makes you focus. And you're like, it can't do all those things. Technically, it can. The problem is that they're individual cannabinoids. And so these three are cannabinoids and CBD oils, and these three are cannabinoids and CBD oils. But the problem is that if you tell somebody CBD does all these things, you're technically correct, but you're not giving the information they need. So you need, for instance, if you talk about seizure control, lanolol, limonene, mycerin are some of the really good ones to use. So if you're using something over here that's for inflammation, it's not going to help that much for epilepsy, but they're all cannabinoids. So if you made the statement, cannabinoids help decrease epilepsy, you would be research-wise factually correct. However, you got to make sure that you're taking the right ones. And so there's a lot of that. Like when you go and you talk about detoxifying the body or castor packing, and some people are like, well, you can use them again. And you're like, that's not accurate. So there's a lot of that. And so when we talk about precision, is what we're saying backed by research.
Right.
And so that's been my thing. I've woken up at 4 a.m. for the past decade, and I read for 2 hours, mostly research articles, Harvard, NCBI, National Institutes of Health, WHO, real actual research articles. And that's where a lot of the stuff that I get comes from, is that precision of knowledge. That is the thing we're doing the best thing, and does it fit that why question? Why is this happening? Am I going to the root cause? And that's the precision we're talking about, is going to that root cause with the right information, getting it done. So that's kind of that's the driving force behind that thought.
I know, my bad. I know you're probably like, dude, why did you do that? Just really quick, and we'll be back to that video. I just want you to join our free Facebook group community for health and fitness coaches looking to get more online clients. So just click the link below in the description box, join it absolutely free. We got some cool stuff in there, a lot of videos, we do live trainings every couple of months on there. And we got some cool freebies on there. So just make sure to click the link below, join our free Facebook group for health and fitness coaches that want to level up and get more online clients to create more income, impact, influence, independence. Back to the video.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Thanks for explaining that.
It's basically just people take things out of context, right? Whenever they hear something like that and they spread it on social media, and it's just ignorant, without even really understanding the science of it and how really it's like the applicability, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because I'll ask people, doctors, researchers, and I go, hey, this is really cool. I've never heard this, never seen this. Where's your research on this? And they're like, what do you mean research? And I'm like, the thing that takes something from an opinion to like matter, because we all have our opinions on things.
Sure. Yep. Yeah.
But, and I can tell you like, well, my opinion on this is X, Y, and Z, but I don't have any research to back it up. Right. And so I'm like, so take it for whatever it's worth. But when you have research and you're like, no, I said this thing, and here's 6 pages of research. Like I was talking to a cardiologist the other day about how I feel like statin drugs, for some people, are obviously needed, but for a lot of people, they're more damaging to the heart than helpful. And he said, how could you possibly say that? And I said, well, we know that statin drugs decrease D3, so now our sodium gate potentiality is going to be reduced from the ion standpoint. We know that it reduces testosterone. The heart is a muscle. It requires testosterone to heal and regenerate, so that's going to be a problem. And it decreases CoQ10, which is what our body uses to make ATP for the heart to actually beat. And he goes, why do you think that? And I was like, there's a lot of research. He goes, can you send me some? And I was like, sure. And before he got home, I sent him like 12 articles that I'd already researched and read, and that were already in my stack of research. And he got back to me and he was like, I've never seen this. And I was like, you're a cardiologist. So, and that's one of those things that, and hopefully he'll be able to come back and be like, hey, look, yes, this is what the research said, but let me give you some different articles that show something different. And that's the communication back and forth that I want so badly that we haven't been able to have on social media. Because you can think something and you can find research that backs up your idea, but then when you're like, well, you didn't look at the global functionality of this, right? So yes, that's true in a micro sense, but if you look at this from a larger scale, this is why we do X, Y, and Z. You can go, oh, I was right on the battle, I was wrong on the war, right?
Gotcha.
And so that's the communication I think we all need, that we can then go back and forth. Because a lot of the docs I work with, like they'll say something and I'll be like, let's go back and forth. Or I'll say something and they'll go, well, have you thought about this medication? So that, and so we'll go back and forth on it with research. And it's just whoever comes up with that's the other cool thing. A specific drug could be phenomenal for this group of people and terrible for this group.
Exactly.
As long as we don't have that communication, we can't figure out who to give it to. And so that's been the thing. That's why, like I said, why I'm so excited about the Twitter deal. Because now if we can start getting on and talking about any medical issue we want with doctors around the world, we're going to get solutions a lot faster.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to kind of stick on like research and like resources too, because the resource that I know you guys have in the Chalmers Wellness office, you guys have your book, which is the Pillars of Wellness, right? So that's an awesome resource to be able to give to people. So can you give us maybe a sneak peek of just what those pillars are?
Yeah. So, and again, you'll quickly tell that I'm not a marketing person. So my 4 pillars are biomechanical, biochemical, spiritual, and psychological. So the biomechanical is how the body moves neurologically and physically. So we're going to talk about exercise. We're going to talk about postural tone, things like that. The biochemical is going to be supplementation, medications, the way the body physiology, the way the body chemically just works normally. The spiritual piece, this isn't Christianity or Buddhism or anything. It's more or less the way that we work with people around us. So I could have called it relationship function or that type of thing, but there is a lot of the relationship things, advice I give, the things I think come from different religions in the world. And so that philosophy I've just kind of associated with the spiritual piece. So that's how that piece sets out. In the psychology, it kind of goes back to all those super wealthy, super successful people I know are all super positive. It's about mindset. It's how do you choose to look at a problem? How do you choose to solve problems? And how do you choose to move forward with your life? And people are like, well, I was brought up real negative and life's been real negative. And I'm like, great, change it. They're like, well, that's going to be hard. I'm like, okay, are you afraid of hard work? Because if this is important, if you had to carry your kid for 3 miles or they'd die, that's hard. But would you do it? Yeah, because it's worth it. So that's the thing. It's like, so when I talk to people, I'm like, well, how important is this to you? Like, it's really important to me that I have the right information for my patients. So I wake up at 4 a.m. and I read for 2 or 3 hours every day for the past 10 years. That's important to me. It's not that important to other people, and I get it. That's fine. So, it's that what's your hierarchy of needs, I guess. It's like, how important is this stuff?
Yeah, but that's so scary though too. Just like, being at that level, like if somebody's a doctor, a chiropractor, like a high level nutritionist, and if they don't sit there and if they're not immersed in the actual like scientific literature, like you are, that's scary, man. Just to be like, oh, I got my degree or I got this certification, I'm done learning, so kudos to you for doing that. That's like respect.
Well, and the thing is that anytime somebody comes in or asks me questions I know the answers to, like, I'm always like, okay, that's what I'm going to spend the next 3 or 4 days doing silly researching on. But that also kind of helps with, there's a lot of people who are doing surface level stuff. And now I've got guys from all over the world calling me up. I mean, like, I will pay you to just, like, we're not writing scripts. They don't buy our supplements. They're just like, I will pay you to just be able to ask you questions. Like, they'll send me their blood work from their doctor and they'll be like, this is what my doctor said. What do you think? And I'll go through it. Like, I had a guy come in the other day who sent me some stuff, and this was like his trial. And he was like, are my levels good? And this and that on his hormones. And I was like, yeah, man. I go, you need to go donate blood. And he was like, what? And I was like, dude, you're 2 points over. I was like, I went through the whole thing, how dangerous it was. And he was like, okay. And I was like, was the doc you're working with, did he not say anything? And he was like, no. I was like, when did you talk to him? He said, yesterday. I was like, all right, man. I was like, you need to do this. And he was like, okay. He's like, you're now in charge of my entire family stuff. He's like, everything we do is going to get sent to you. You're going to review it, and then we're going to go ahead and do everything else. And he's in a different country. So it's not like I could even write the scripts or do the things because he's in a different country. But now I go over all this medical stuff to make sure he's okay.
Yeah.
So that's the thing is, that's why the research is so important, is so that you can properly take care of people all the way around.
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. All right, Matt. So I want to talk a little bit about adversity and overcoming adversity. And I think it's important for the listeners just because people are going through so many things and who knows what it is, their own situations. Was there ever a time, or did you have like a dark season that you just like were going through that you just were like, man, I'm almost going to just quit, like throw in the towel? And just how did you overcome that?
I haven't really had a time where I'm like, I am going to quit in the pursuit of the wellness and the healthcare stuff. There's been times where it got really, really hard.
Yeah.
And I was like, I might have to come up with another way of getting through this. But I always, because I knew, here's the problem. I knew that what I'm doing now was my purpose. And I knew that if I ever strayed away from that, it would destroy me. And so I was like, I don't really have a choice. I'm going to do this thing. And I might just have to figure out a different path to get where I want to go, but I'm going to get where I want to go. Mm-hmm. And I always had the idea that I was going to get there. It was just up to me to figure out how to get there. So I never really said that, like, from a dark place of where we're going to go here. I was in a car wreck like a week after I graduated from chiropractic school. And I broke my left foot, my left femur, my left shoulder, shattered my car window with my face. I have a screw in my left foot, a titanium rod in my femur, pin in my knee, pin in my hip. And I had a super wicked concussion. Like for weeks, months, it was terrible. Like I remember sitting in my living room, and a trailer for a movie came on, and my buddies were there. And I was like, that looks awesome. We got to go see that. And they were like, dude, we saw that yesterday and you were with us. And I have zero recollection of the entire day. And I was just like, oh, okay. That was hard because like everything, like I had my specialty in neurology. I knew how bad this was. Like it was weird because I had times where I was fully coherent. And then the only thing I can equate it to is because we've either all done this or know somebody who's done this. You drink too much, you wake up the next day and people have to tell you what you did the night before. Mm-hmm. But that was totally sober. That was my life. Like we were like, hey man, this is what happened yesterday. This is what went on. This is what we did. It wasn't necessarily negative stuff. Like we went and saw a movie, but that was gone. And I had obviously worried. Everything I've ever done has been knowledge-based. I have to have my brain for it. And now I might not have that anymore. So that was probably the darkest thing I came to. That concussion, I almost died during that concussion as well. This is one of the reasons I have such a giant anti-opioid thing. So I had a massive concussion. I'm giant, of 250 pounds. They gave me 500 milligram hydrocodone. And they're like, you had your femur broken. You had massive surgery. You're going to be in lots of pain. Make sure you take some of this so that you want to get out ahead of the pain. Cool, great. So what ended up happening one day was I took 2 like I was supposed to. And then I forgot. And I took 2 more. And I forgot. Concussion. Took 2 more. I ended up throwing up about 10 pills, about 5 grams of hydrocodone, which is, I don't know how much it takes to kill me with hydrocodone, but that's probably pretty close. So that's when I got rid of all the hydrocodone. I was like, I'm done. Like I'll hurt. Like I don't want to die. I'm just going to hurt. So that episode of my life at the time really sucked. But now that I can look back on it, I was like, I learned a ton of stuff. And I can empathize with my patients when they have concussions. Like, hey, I remember that. That sucked. But you get better, right? Yeah. And so those things have been really beneficial because you take something that's the worst part of your life, and once you get through it, you're like, how do I now apply this to make my life better and help other people around me? And so it's been great.
Yeah. Now I appreciate you sharing that. Like I had no idea. And that's exactly why, like I asked that question, because you just never know. And I mean, it's a testament that you turned your messes into your messages and what you're doing now. And just really quick, like if you don't know about our background, we lost our father when we were 17 years old. He was in a car accident. He was a correctional officer at San Quentin State Prison. So, we went through a lot of dark times, but we've done the same thing, is turned our messes into our messages and just been so relentless in our pursuit of just like, helping people and just reaching just different milestones.
Yeah. And that's one of those things that once you go through something like you guys did, or like I did, it really confirms your purpose and helps you solidify your why. And I always tell people, they're like, people ask me like, aren't you worried about burning out? Like you work 16, 18-hour days, 7 days a week. And I'm like, you cannot burn out when you're working deep in your purpose.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's why you're here.
Absolutely.
So there's been lots of times where I've been researching for 2 hours and I have to go do something, and I'm irritated that I have to leave the research because I'm learning something that's applicable. And so that's like, we went on a vacation. I still got up at 4. Nobody else wanted to go do anything till 8 o'clock in the morning. So I read for 4 hours.
Yeah.
So again, people were like, I can't believe you did that on vacation. I'm like, the vacation happens around that. Like, that's my purpose. Yeah. That's what I do. That's who I am. So that's the big thing.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Love it. All right. So I'm going to go super deep on you on this question. So if you had 5 years to live, what would you stop doing?
That's going to be really hard because I've shaped my life around that question. Because I have almost died a couple times. It's what is important, what is not, and what do I need to do to answer the questions of, have I given enough back? The idea that one day, the idea that this life stops and something else happens is something I've 100% bought into. And so the idea of, I am going to die. What is the way that I want to be remembered? What do I want to leave for my children? How do I want to set that up? It's something that's been weighing on me for years, because once you get in a car wreck and almost die, you start thinking about it.
Yeah.
But so that's been the big thing, is that there's not a whole lot in my life that I would consider fluff. When I look back at what I've done, we've been able to do, like, my work helps people. So when you look back and you're like, hey, should you have spent those 4 hours figuring out how to fix fibromyalgia and celiac or whatever, or should you have spent that, playing video games with your kids? There's a toss up there. I think that the fibromyalgia thing kind of takes an edge. And so that's why I've decided to dedicate time to that. So I don't think there's anything that I would quit doing or really change, because I'm in the mindset of, I could be gone tomorrow.
Yeah.
So what is today's function? How is that pushing me towards the goals that I have?
Yeah. That's powerful. Love it. Man. So what's next for Matt Chalmers?
Oh gosh. Well, so like I said, I've also lost a family member to opioid, not abuse, but just he was prescribed opioids and just ended up killing him. So we're working with some cannabis companies because I really want to get an alternative to daily pain meds that are opioid based. That one we should be out later this year. We've got a big stuff in California based on THC. We've got some here in Texas based on THC and based on Delta 8. And then we're doing some stuff. One of the other things is that, so I've taken my concierge thing I've done here in the office for 15 years, and I'm giving that process to ID Life, and they're rolling through the detoxification and how the body works and everything. And so they're rolling that out. And then we're also taking the concierge idea to all the athletes in Frisco. So, and we're going to do this in other cities, but we have to do this one as a proof of concept. So since we work with so many, the league owners and, all the high-end athletes, all the NFL guys and all this good stuff, we're taking all these athletes and we're like, okay, what do you guys not have access to that you need access to? So that's going to be the right surgeons, the right doctors, the right supplementation, the right information. So they have a pathway. So if your kid gets hurt, I ask this parents all the time, I'm like, if your kid breaks his ankle, where do you go? And they're like, I don't know. I guess I call you. I'm like, cool, great. You have a plan, but so what we're doing is we're getting everybody together, and I'm thinking, like, here are the best surgeons for the best things. And so if you come into our system, we're going to put you through the system of, are you seeing the right person for the initial injury, for the imaging? Are you getting pain creams instead of opioids? Are you like, what is the path that you're taking? Here's ours. Here's our process. You guys can look at it ahead of time. If you want to get in on it, because you're not part of the group, we can give medical discounts legally. We can do all sorts of things for them. So we're trying to elevate the path of, I'm an athlete, I got injured. How do I get back to my sport, or how do I get back to my life? We're trying to elevate that and put that into a easier to follow practice. So that's what we're doing right now. We'll see where we are next year.
Yeah. Sounds awesome, man. Exciting times ahead. Yeah.
It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, right on. Well, Matt, before I ask the last question, honestly, this has been a great conversation, and I just want to express some gratitude, say thank you so much for your time. I know you're a busy man. Time is something we never get back. So thank you so much for giving your time and wisdom today on our show. And just, thank you just for everything that you're doing, man. Just like everything you're doing to just, create an impact, create a ripple effect through health and fitness, the wellness, the community, just to change lives. And like you said, to give back more to the universe than take more. So just want to say thank you for all that. Thanks a lot, Matt.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the last question is, what is your definition of living a dynamic lifestyle?
So it's those 4 pillars. It's, have I done the most that I can do for each one of those 4 categories, right? So like, it's funny because I had somebody ask me the other day, they're like, you don't look like any of the doctors I've normally seen. I'm like, that should tell you something. If you tell somebody I'm a doctor, what you're basically telling them is I have a mastery of the human body. Does that person look like they have a mastery of the human body?
Right.
So that's the first thing. So, that one from the biomechanical standpoint of like, have I done everything I can from this standpoint? From the biochemical standpoint of, am I doing what's best for my body? And then the psychological is, the whole, am I where I need to be so that I can show other people, not tell other people, but show other people where a good place to go is. Not where they should go, because it's different for every person, but like I found a way to help me. Have I been showing that? And the spiritual piece of, am I doing what I need to do to maintain my relationship with my wife, my kids, my friends, with everybody else? Like, so that's the dynamic lifestyle that I try to do. Is here are the four major, most important pieces of what I consider my life. Am I doing enough on all of them to be as good as I can in each aspect of those four pillars? And so that's kind of the way that I look at my life. Again, I'm not trying to tell anybody else that's how they should live, but that's what I've decided for me. And so that would be what I would consider living the dynamic lifestyle.
Love it. Yeah. And before I ask kind of like where people can, follow you, Matt, like I've gotten an adjustment from you in person, man. And it's like, you're not just some normal chiropractor. So.
Well, it's funny because with all the stuff we're doing, the chiropractic piece, I will probably end up doing free soon because I love it so much. And, it's just one of those things where I'm like, I got to get into it. Probably the easiest thing, any of the social medias, Dr. Chalmers 1, and then chalmerswellness.com. And then I've got the Facebook group, the Wellness Insights with Dr. Chalmers. So any of those would be great places to catch up. Awesome.
And is there anything that we or like the audience can specifically support you on?
Nothing that I can think of. Like I said, I might post some cool stuff to Twitter. If now that Elon owns it, if we can get the idea that I can post things and they're not going to be taken down or stuff like that. So probably, just following and spread. If I say something that you're like, that's cool, I think it would help other people, share it with other people.
Yeah, exactly.
Because my goal is to get, any of the information out. A lot of the stuff that's on my YouTube page and stuff like that, I'm giving like plantar fasciitis and carpal tunnel, stuff like that. Like I'm teaching people how to fix that at home.
Yeah.
So you don't have to come spend a bunch of money. You can fix it at home. So those type of things, if you find something that you like that I've said or done, share it.
Awesome. All right, guys, we'll have all that linked up in the show notes. So go make sure to follow Dr. Matt Chalmers. And again, Matt, thank you so much for your time, your wisdom, your expertise. Truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Anytime, guys. Thanks for having me.
All right, guys, until next time.